Hello, why do they doubt the kid? I'm about to prove them all wrong again. I got a low tolerance, cause they don't even know what the problem is. It's me. You waiting on the boy to fail, then hold your breath and face your death. Cause you play a roulette with each step I progress, no less. Go ahead and place your bets, cause we know where we at, we know we top tier. Cause all the hate that you bring, we know it stops here. I'm taking off like a rocket here, ain't stopping here. It's strange how they cannot see the future, but see profit here. Wait up, we gon' always win. Hello, I can't take no loss. My team hold no L's, no. Aiming for the top, can't make it by myself.
Yes, sir. Welcome back to Brett Breaks Things. Aiming for the top, can't make it by myself. That is what we're doing here. I cannot make it by myself. So the obligatory, please support the show whenever you can. I mean, the views are going through the roof, and we are definitely getting some momentum. And I've just gotten a lot of response from people all over the place in my life and outside of my life. Keep going. Keep doing it. It's necessary. I do know this is necessary. And in the face of whatever challenges, we are going to keep going. But I cannot make it by myself. I do encourage you to check out the GoFundMe, Brett Breaks Things. We're about 40% to our goal. We get there, we keep doing this. We keep doing this, and that's the goal. I did solicit some calls yesterday. I said I want to hear from you, and then I didn't get to it because I just had so much to get to. I had so much video to play that I felt was necessary for some of the context of what led up to the deployment of the Marines in LA. And I kind of wanted to foreshadow a little bit of what you may see going forward. But I felt it was necessary, so I played a lot of that, and I didn't get to your calls, but I want to get to your calls today. I do. I want to get to your calls. Call in. Get on hold. Stay on hold for me. I will get to some of your calls today if there are some to get to. 561-270-3844. I want to know how you feel about the deployment of Marines on U.S. soil. I want to know how you feel about the legitimacy of them being deployed to L.A. right now. And I want to know how you feel about what this means going forward. What do these optics tell you about Trump's long-term plans and where he may be going with this? So I've got other things to get to today, but I am going to open up with some of the reactions to this Marine deployment, okay? Because some of the reactions from the Hill are coming in and from other sources. Some kind of interesting interviews are taking place regarding the deployment of the troops from different, we're hearing from different people at different places. And I did want to play some of that for you. And I will, but I'm not going to do the LA situation all day. I've got other things that I have put on the back burner because of this that I want to get to before it falls out of the news cycle. One of these things, the Trump parade, we're going to get to. I know some of you definitely been waiting to hear a little bit about this, and I'm just going to, I'm going to dive in just a little bit. But first, I want to get to some of the reaction of this LA Marine deployment. Mark Levin, Republican from California, he came out and had some things to say. We saw Maxine Waters. We heard from Karen Bass. We heard from some other reps in LA. And now we're going to hear from Mark Levin, who I thought had some really interesting things to say about this troop deployment.
They're training for non-lethal weapons and for crowd control and for civil disobedience. It's happening right now because they haven't had it before. It's a total of 4 days. 4 days that they're training for this purpose. Our Marines did not sign up to repress civilians. They didn't sign up to be used as pawns in a political agenda. The decision to deploy Marines to Los Angeles is an abuse of power. Full stop. The state of California, as has been said, neither requested the National Guard nor the Marines. The president sent them anyway. It's all about power.
So right there, and he foreshadowed my next video with him, it's all about power, but right there he focused on the Marines. Now he says this isn't what you signed up for. To violence on civilian population isn't what the Marines signed up for. It's probably not why they signed up. I agree with that. That's probably not why. Good Lord, I hope that's not why they signed up. But they have to understand under this administration that might fall under the job description. Got to understand that. And the president still enjoys a lot of political support from the military, even in the face of his suckers and losers, even in the face of calling, saying I don't respect John McCain because I don't respect people who are captured. even in the face of declining to visit the memorials of fallen soldiers, not once but twice, because he didn't feel like it. In the face of all that, he still enjoys staunch military political support. But Mark Levin, he says, yeah, they didn't sign up for this. No, but they got to be ready for it. Under this administration, you need to be ready for it because that might be what you're doing. But he mentioned it's all about power, and he expands on that. It is all about power.
Let me be very clear, as my colleagues have said, we all support the right to peaceful protest. It's essential for a healthy democracy. We strongly condemn the agitators who are committing acts of violence. Their behavior is completely unacceptable. And they're giving people like Stephen Miller exactly the images that they want. And that makes it even easier to then pick a fight over political retribution. But by sending the Marines to Los Angeles, the president is fanning the flames of a very delicate situation. He wants the protests to spiral so he can crack down even further. I'll always support our service members. And the vast majority of Marines are not trained for this. They're training for non-lethal weapons and for crowd control and for civil disobedience. It's happening right now because they haven't had it before. It's a total of 4 days. 4 days that they're training for this purpose. It's dangerous. And it threatens the very apolitical nature of our armed forces.
Now, I don't care how you feel about the deployment. He is right about giving them just 4 days to train on this completely new purview of responsibility, this new set of responsibilities they have in terms of policing and controlling civilian crowds. 4 days to train on it. I don't care how you feel about the deployment itself. You have to agree that that is dangerous. And if you're somebody who had served our country, currently serving our country, or have aspirations, or have served, or have, taken part in any type of organized, peacekeeping force in any capacity, whether it be a security guard, a retired cop, you especially, the people of those groups, you especially have to understand how dangerous it may be to send these Marines out on 4 days of training concerning their current mission, supporting law enforcement in the area, protecting federal property, responding to violence against law enforcement. 4 days to train. But he nailed it, and he called out the real architect of what's going on. I don't have to tell any of you how little Trump is invested in the inner workings of his own government. He doesn't write his own policy. He doesn't set his own talking points. He just does stream of consciousness riffing, right, on the basic principles of stuff that he is signing into law, stuff that he is signing executive orders concerning. The philosophy of his administration is not set by him. It's set by Stephen Miller and Steve Bannon. And Mark calls out Steve Miller. These are the optics that Steve Miller wants to escalate this. You called it. It is Stephen Miller. It is Stephen Miller. And it's such a basic principle. It's such a basic thing to understand that even that young man who had his girlfriend literally ripped out of his arms for filming the actions of the riot squads and the National Guard, he understood this is what they want. They want us to get more and more angry so they can respond more and more aggressively. Even that young man who has no investment in the political inner workings, he's just filming what's going on in the streets, and he called it. You're right, Rep. Mark Levin. You are absolutely right. It is the optics that Stephen Miller wants. But don't take the rep's word for it. How about a retired general? How does ex-military, people who were at the highest levels of our armed forces, how do they feel about it?
Because we keep using the word, and the word that's being headlined is deployment of troops. They're deploying troops, whether it's the Guard or the Marines, to Los Angeles. Is that a legal thing to do, that the president can do that? Yes, it is. The president can deploy soldiers or Marines anywhere. The fact that we have to look at is, what is the mission set? What are they attempting to do? And you hit this very well in your conversation just now. What's their job? The National Guard's job, unless it's under the Insurrection Act, is to provide support for civilian authorities. In fact, that's the mission set, which means they guard buildings. That's okay. Why the White House has deployed Marines, I can only venture to say it's because they want to use the intimidation factor of Marines being there. But Marines can't do anything more than provide support to civilian authorities either. And truthfully, Marines don't train in that mission set. So that's very dangerous.
That is retired General Mark Hertling. And he called it as he sees it, because he understands better than anybody what goes into the deployment of Marines, why they would be deployed, how they are trained to execute the mission of that deployment, and most importantly, he understands that in this particular instance, the presence of the Marines is simply an intimidation tactic. That's out of a retired general, Mark Hertling. Couldn't said it better. He knows exactly how Marines operate, are trained, and the reasons for their deployment, and he is left at a loss for understanding this deployment. And that is because there is absolutely no reason for the Marines to be deployed in LA. And yes, we had the letter from the chief of police saying, first the letter came out saying this is going to create chaos and logistical problems, deploying the Marines on such a short notice. It's going to make it tougher. Basically, he said it's going to make it tougher for us, the LA law enforcement, to do their jobs. Now, he did a 180 on that and started going down the bullet points of reasons cited for releasing the National Guard into the county, talking about violence against police officers, property damage, overwhelmed by the current situation, needing support. So he did hit the bullet points that Stephen Miller and the president are citing for releasing these National Guards. But as Newsom said himself, the first deployment was 1,700 National Guardsmen. Of them, only 300 were sent into action. We're actually doing something. Okay, had a job to do. Were necessary. Only 300 were necessary. The other 1,400 were standing by, waiting for some sort of order or deployment. And then he sends 2,000 more, plus 700 Marines. It's intimidation. Even you, those of you involved in the military, you got to admit, it doesn't make sense. The numbers don't add up. They don't add up. Hegseth got questioned. He got questioned about who's coming up with the cash for this. How are we paying for this? In a world where we're allowing Doge to cut everything and everyone in the name of efficiency and cutting of waste, how do you justify and where are you coming up with the money to pay to deploy 700 Marines, to deploy 4,000 National Guardsmen? Where are you coming up with this? Is this in the budget? Is this something you planned for? Explain to us where you were coming up with this money. I mean, with so much waste and fraud, although we do know that the military budget and the budget on the border was increased. In the face of your health care getting cut, SNAP benefits getting cut, the military did get more money.
It's time for a quick break, then we break some more. You're listening to Brett Breaks Things. You're back with Brett Breaks Things, because democracy doesn't defend itself.
When he said that Marines might be dispatched to Los Angeles, I think that's an important message that's being sent. Hopefully it has the deterrent effect. But he's federalized the National Guard. I think that's an appropriate step. They are bringing an end to that chaos, because I believe we have to maintain the rule of law. And if the state and local leaders are unable or unwilling to do so, it is the job of the federal government to step in. We have the number one job of the government is to protect the people, protect their safety and their property. And if that's not being done by local and state authorities, then the feds have to step in. I think it's appropriate.
Mike Johnson has the gumption, the gall, the temerity to sit there and mention quelling violence, rule of law, protecting the people. You call out the National Guard in the face of protests over ICE raids and deportations. But on January 6th, multiple officers were grievously injured and killed. Violence breaking out all over our nation's capital, an actual rebellion, an actual insurrection. No National Guard, no Marines. Instead, we had gallows on the front lawn for Mike Pence. That's the rule of law that this administration supports. We're going to protect the people except the Capitol Police and Mike Pence. They're not getting protected. You got, I'm trying to keep it PG, but Johnson, Mr. Christian Values, thou shalt not lie. It's there. It's there, Mike. You claim to be the most Christian of us all, and you just lie and lie and lie and lie. But I mentioned Pete Hegseth. Now, this is Rep. Betty McCollum out of Minnesota. She attempted to grill Pete Hegseth on where this money's coming from. Not only for this, but for Trump's military parade. And I play this video in this particular order because I'm going to dive right into that friggin' parade that this dude is dead set on throwing. Oh, it's happening. All right. Now, any of you who had heard about the parade and thought there will be stopgaps, there will be impediments to this fascist display of power, this authoritarian hallmark, you were hoping some way, somehow it wouldn't happen. They are dashed. Your hopes are dashed. Okay. It is happening. It is going. It is a go on Trump's birthday. So here's Pete Hegseth getting questioned about where are we going to come up with the money for all this.
Mr. Secretary, I plan to ask you some budget questions about the following: the cost of the Qatar plane, where the money from the Army's parade is coming from, or the National Guard deployments to the border, where that funding is coming from. I honor and celebrate the United States Army, but I'd like to know how much this parade is going to cost. I have sent the department letters on several occasions on this, and I'm still waiting for a response. But then something else happened this weekend, and it needs to be addressed. And that is the President's premature and escalatory decision to deploy not only the National Guard troops to Los Angeles, but active duty Marines as well. How much are these deployments going to cost for both the Marines and the National Guard? And what training or duties are not taking place because of these deployments? Where in your limited budget, sir, are you going to find, in the remainder of this fiscal year, are you going to pull the money to cover these deployments? What holes are being created?
Well, Congresswoman, thank you for the question. You are right. We are both originally from Minnesota, which is why I recall 2020 quite well, when Governor Walz abandoned a police precinct and allowed it to be burned to the ground, and also allowed 5 days of chaos to occur inside the streets of Minneapolis.
God, man. You got to hand it to these people. You got to hand it to the upper management of the Trump administration. They stay right on brand. You get asked a direct question, you'll have time to lie. But before you get to the lies, get to the culture war. Get to the attacks. Get to the whataboutism. You were asked a direct question about the budgetary concerns of deploying 700 Marines and the budgetary concerns of this parade. You were asked a direct question. What do you answer with? Tim Walz is a terrible guy and allowed police buildings and property be burned to the ground. That actually is a lie and the culture war attack all rolled into one, honestly. But I mean, no intention of answering the question. And the look of indignance on this dude's face, every time somebody talks to him that is not a sympathetic party or somebody who's right in line with this administration's philosophy, he is absolutely offended. How dare you ask me a direct question? How dare you? Who do you think you are? Is written all over his condescending face. He continues to grandstand.
So in Los Angeles, we believe that ICE, which is a federal law enforcement agency, has the right to safely conduct operations in any state and any jurisdiction in the country, especially after 21 million illegals have crossed our border under the previous administration. ICE ought to be able to do its job, whether it's Minneapolis or Los Angeles.
I have limited time. I asked a budget
and they are
question.
being...
Could the Secretary please address the budget? Thank you.
You asked about the situation in Los Angeles, and we believe
asked about
ICE
the budget.
agents should be
I
allowed to be
asked about the
safe in
budget,
doing
sir.
their operations, and we have deployed National Guard and the Marines to protect them in the execution of their duties.
Did anybody hear an answer to the question yet? No, neither did I. She asks it again, and he goes right into the attack, right into the whataboutism, right into the culture war, staying right on messaging, right on branding. Tax Newsom, tax, mentions the ICE raids and how awesome they are and how they should be allowed to continue as is. If you don't allow us to rip your children and your friends and your family members away from you and detain them, this is what you get. That was his answer to the budgetary question. He finally does answer it, though.
If
The police chief said
Mr.
she was
Chairman, if
overwhelmed,
the Secretary's not
so we
going to
helped.
ask the budgetary questions, I will yield back my time if the Secretary refuses to answer the budgetary questions I put before him. They're important. What training missions aren't happening? Where are you pulling the money from? And how are you planning this in the moving forward? These are budget questions that affect this committee and the decisions we're going to be making in a couple of hours. If you're not going to answer them, please let the chairman know, and I will take back my time and I will yield it back to the chairman.
Mr. Secretary, I want to just let us know what accounts you're pulling the money to fund.
Thankfully, unlike the previous administration, we've got a 13% increase in our defense budget, and we will have the capability to cover down on contingencies,
Mr.
which is something the
Chairman,
National Guard and the Marine plan for. So we have the funding to cover down on contingencies, especially ones as important as maintaining law and order in a major American city.
Now, I believe that Hegseth, who used to be a Fox News talking head, I believe he knew he had a serviceable answer locked and loaded, right? He had it in his back pocket. But you're not going to just ask me a question and I'll answer it. I may have an answer for you, but the culture war comes first. So I'm going to filibuster and grandstand and spin it and attack until I am absolutely forced to give you an answer. And he does mention there is discretionary spending. There's room for discretionary spending in the military budget. And he's probably right about that. He could have just said that, but he had to get his attacks on Tim Walz and Gavin Newsom and these protests, these violent protests. He had to get his attacks in first. He had to squeeze every drop out of his camera time to once again reinforce, hey, Donnie, man, I am a loyal soldier. Check me out. They dare to ask me a direct question. Check this out, Donnie. But he did answer it, and we do know that the military has a new surplus of funding in the one big ugly ass bill. He does have more money to play with, and he's going to say it's discretionary, and there's not a lot of room for Betty to maneuver after getting that answer. So he did answer it, but the parade. I'm going to show you some video. That's video out of North Korea as they were getting ready for one of their... Oh, no, wait. No, that was us. That was Washington, D.C. I saw the Washington Monument in the background. Sorry about that. I got my militaristic fascist displays of power confused. That wasn't North Korea. I'm sorry, that was America. That was Washington, D.C. That was the Washington Monument in the background of that shot, which I find poetic. And it forces me to think, what would Washington think of this display of power? A guy who, honestly got our democracy started off on the right foot, the perfect foot, by handing control of the Continental Army back to Congress after he had won the war. He handed control back to the people. And there's a monument to his honor, his greatness, looming over the exact opposite. Consolidating military shows of power, consolidating money, consolidating, bringing tanks in, aircraft in, troops in to show who's really in charge. I wonder what Washington would think of this parade. I wonder what Washington would think of this presidency. Donnie's having his little parade, and we're going to get to some sound about that. He talks about it. I'm going to dive into the numbers a little bit. The parade will be on his 79th birthday. And, you know, yes, Don is old. Biden was old. We can have a conversation about the limited choices that are in front of us when it comes to the presidential election, and are the right people, the most fit people, being brought to the forefront for our choosing. We can have a whole conversation about that. And yes, Donnie tripped on his way up the Air Force One steps a couple days ago. I don't think that's worth showing. A dude tripping because he's lost his footing has nothing to do with anything that concerns us. That being said, Don is old. And Don is angry. And Don is losing it. And Don, he wants you to know about his greatness.
Breaking politics, breaking narratives, breaking news. But first, we need a coffee break. Brett breaks things, fighting for America one mic drop at a time.
No, I think it's time that we celebrate. And I sort of have to laugh at these people. Well, you know, you're going to spend a lot of money. A lot of that money is being paid for by me and people that make donations. I don't know if you know that. A lot of it won't even come out of the military. I think I can say that, Susie, right? We have people putting up money to do it. Not that it's necessary, because I think it's a great expenditure. We have mini tanks. We have all sorts of new ones and very old ones, old from World War I and World War II. It's really a celebration of the Army. So the Army is a year older than the country. So next year we celebrate 250 years, but we're celebrating the Army on Flag Day. And it's not my birthday. It is my birthday, but I'm not celebrating my birthday. I'm celebrating Flag Day. It happens to be the same day, so I take a little heat.
I take a little heat. I'm going to get to that sound in just a second. He's lying to your face right there. Shocker. But 561-270-3844. Call in. I know a lot of you guys that join the live stream join a little late. I know this time slot doesn't work for everybody optimally. And I know a lot of you end up joining me sometime around the halftime mark of the show. So to you people, welcome. And to anybody, please, if you're watching, call in. I want to lean on your experiences. I want to lean, you know, when I took calls for Randy, I was blown away by the different perspectives provided from living in different regions of the country, different ages, right? Different occupational skill sets would bring different perspectives to what's going on, different education levels, different cultural influences. I want to lean on that. I want to hear from you. I want to hear how you feel about 700 Marines being deployed. I want to hear how you feel about this military parade or anything else you want to talk to me about. 561-270-3844. Call in. So he's talking about, he's taking a little heat, but it's okay because he's paying for it and donors are paying for it. Of course, he doesn't name any names because he cannot, because he is not paying for it. That was a flat lie. He does not have donors paying for it. We actually know exactly where this money is coming from. How about that? Your lies are so easily debunkable, but being ironclad is not the quality of Don's lies. It's the rapid fire nature in which he delivers them and the over-the-top nature in which they are delivered. You just can't keep up, and some of it's just so ridiculous. Some of it is near unfact-checkable, but this is easy. It's going to cost $45 million for Donnie's little birthday parade here. This little authoritarian show of power. It's going to cost $45 million. And who's bearing the cost of this? The individual Army units that are involved in this parade. Okay, the different units that are being called in for this parade are going to have to bear the cost for this. It's going to fall on our military budget, not Donnie, not his mysterious donors that don't exist. Okay, and he says that's peanuts to the value of what we're doing. We have the greatest missiles in the world. We have the greatest submarines in the world. Okay, because we're not going to be firing missiles during this parade. And I don't know how you're going to get submarines to be shown off on the streets of Washington. So we have the greatest submarines in the world. We have the greatest army tanks in the world. They will be shown. And we have the greatest weapons in the world, and we're going to celebrate it. 6,600 Army soldiers will be at that parade. 6,600. That could be training, doing something useful with their time in service. Nope, they're going to be goose-stepping to Don's greatness is what they're going to be doing. 50 aircraft, 150 military vehicles, including Humvees, tanks, trucks, stuff like that, will be at the parade. And of course, Donnie couldn't help but mention his idol. If if you look at Russia, they celebrate Victory Day in the same fashion. That's right, because we want to be just like Putin. We want to be just like Kim Jong-un. We want to be just like Viktor Orban. We want to be strongmen authoritarians who remind the people in their country just who's in charge and what we have to enforce our rule. Those are the people we aspire to be. Those are the countries we aspire to model ourselves after. Hungary, Russia, China, North Korea. Those are the current models of what USA could be. So the parade is a go. It's 100% happening. He continues. He can't mention this parade, this celebration of Flag Day, not his birthday, just so happens to be on his birthday. It's a celebration of Flag Day and victory in World War II. Even in something so positive, right? So obviously necessary and aspiring, he can't help but stay on brand.
Celebrating big on Saturday. We're going to have a lot of, and if there's any protest that wants to come out, they will be met with very big force. By the way, for those people that want to protest, they're going to be met with very big force. And I haven't even heard about a protest, but, this is people that hate our country, but they will be met with very heavy force. Thank you very much, everyone.
So, if anybody shows up to that parade and they're not on board in any way, you're bad and you're an enemy of America. That is the rhetoric of a fascist. That is the rhetoric of an authoritarian in the face of an authoritarian show of power. You have any problem with this, any problem at all, you're going to get hit hard. You're going to get hit hard. And I got to be honest with you, I believe him. And I'm going to say it right off the top. I know there is a lot of people that are getting ready to head to D.C. for this parade not to bend the knee or bow in the face of their authoritarian leader. No, they are going to be there to protest this authoritarian show of power. They will show up to protest this. Maybe they're showing up to protest this type of misuse of our military forces or our money. Maybe they're going to show up to protest the optics to the rest of the world who we are starting to align ourselves with. You want to talk about looks like, smells like, tastes like fascism. The rest of the world's going to get a taste on Flag Day. They're going to get a whiff of what America's up to. If they didn't already know, of course. And I beg you, to those people who are going to show up and protest, I beg you to not give them a reason to deploy National Guardsmen, to deploy Marines, to hit you hard. Please don't give them a reason. I'm begging you. It is exactly what he wants. So we are going to celebrate our dear leader on Flag Day. It's essentially what's going to happen. Pam Bondi, she knows the assignment.
I was just in Poland this morning and arrived back not even 2 hours ago. And you have the respect of the entire world of law enforcement around this world. They respect all of you so much. Thank you for making all of us so proud on the worldwide stage.
The world respects you, Mr. Trump. On the world stage, you are respected if they're saying it's the opposite, because we all know the laughing stock that Donald Trump is perceived as by world leaders. You've seen the looks on their faces, the incredulous nature with which they sit and bite their tongue when they visit the White House and he riffs about Elon Musk, or he riffs about Biden's economy, or he riffs about some other nonsense, and they can't even believe this is really happening. We are not respected on the world stage. Trump is not respected on the world stage. But Pam Bondi, you are respected, dear leader. The sun rises with your smile and shines with your laughter. When you are sad, flowers die and leaves fall off trees. She understands the assignment. She knows how to talk to a dear leader. She knows how to address them. Jason Smith as well.
First, start off by thanking you for your leadership, your vision, your commitment to workers and families throughout this country. The One Big Beautiful Bill would not have been possible without you. And it delivers the largest tax cut in U.S. history, the largest mandatory spending cuts in U.S. history, the most significant welfare reforms in U.S. history, and the largest one-time investment in border security. So it's things to be extremely proud about.
Jason, what are you doing? In an attempt to show the reverence to your dear leader, you are bringing up the wrong thing. What do you think this fight with Elon's for? What do you think this show of force in L.A. is for? It's to distract us from this one big ugly-ass bill. Why are you bringing it up now? We successfully have the American public looking over here while we take their Medicaid and Medicare away over here. Look over here, ICE raids. We're furthering your culture war. Don't look over here. Your grandma's kicked out of her home care and her nursing. You're off your Medicare. You're off your Medicaid. No more SNAP benefits. Lie heap gone. VA cut. Don't look there. Look here. Why are you bringing it up, Jason? I know you. I know. You want your op. You want your opportunity in front of a camera to kiss the ring, but you're screwing up, Jason. We're trying to distract people from the the abomination that this bill is. Rand Paul with his sudden bout of clarity, maybe. He's been getting more and more bold when it comes to dissension in front of a camera on the Trump administration. He actually sees this military parade for what it is. How about that?
Your thoughts on the parade that's going to take place? Some Democrats are saying it's a waste of money.
Yeah. Never been a big fan of goose-stepping soldiers in big tanks and missiles rolling down the street. So if you ask me, I wouldn't have done it. I'm not sure what the actual expense of it is, but I'm not really, we were always different than, the images you saw of the Soviet Union and North Korea. We were proud not to be that. And I'm not proposing that that's the image people want to project, but I'm worried about the image, that it isn't necessarily the best image to show.
You're right, Rand, it's not. And Rand has clarity on other things as well, and we're going to get to that next segment.
We'll be back to break it all down. You're listening to Brett Breaks Things. You're back with Brett Breaks Things, because silence isn't an option.
Five 561-270-3844. I'll pop it up on the screen for you when I get a chance. Give us a call. I do want to hear from you. I do want to hear from you. If you're somebody on the cusp of making that phone call to get on air, maybe you're a little scared, I'll make it easy for you. And just do it. If you're on the cusp, but you're a little nervous, I'll make it as easy as possible. I promise. Just call 270-3844, 561-270-3844. And again, to some of the people who have joined me a little later, some people in chat have been asking, how do I donate? GoFundMe, Brett Breaks Things in the search bar. You will find me. You'll see my little mission statement, and you'll see where we are in the funding. And anything at all is greatly, greatly appreciated. I can't overstate that. It is immensely appreciated to keep the lights on and the doors open here. So I mentioned Rand Paul's clarity. I talked a little bit about, as I was talking about the parade and I was talking about some of the budgetary concerns about the parade and the deployment of the Marines, I'm kind of hinting towards the one big ugly ass bill. And there was some new sounders that came out. The CBO adjusted some of its numbers a little bit. They've kind of settled on this bill will add $2.4 trillion to the deficit. After the rework through the House and making it back to the Senate, or making it to the Senate, it's now looking like $2.4 trillion will be added to the deficit. That is the sticking point for some of the Republican dissension like Rand Paul and others. And there are others. And again, I have to caveat that with, don't get too excited about Republican dissension at this point. They are jockeying. They are jockeying for something that will be beneficial to them, whatever that may be, whatever changes they are advocating for in the big, beautiful bill before it goes back to the House, it is going to benefit them. Maybe also you, the people of their state, the constituents, the voters in their state, it may also benefit you, but ultimately they're worried about the election, the optics, the economic impact directly to voters, Republican voters, in their state. They know that if this bill hurts their voting base as bad as it appears it will, they know that if they add this much to the deficit, they know that even Republican voters in states that aren't generally aware of budgetary concerns and things like that will be aware of this, as their family members, their family in particular, will be affected by this bill directly, and they know this. $2.4 trillion to the deficit. And Schumer, he had some things to say about it. This was a couple days ago. I didn't get a chance to get to it, but I thought this was interesting.
Well, we've all been hearing about how devastating the cuts to Medicaid and health care have been. Well, it's getting even worse. The more you look at the bill, at the House bill, the worse it gets. CBO is about to announce that it could go from 13.7 million people who would lose their coverage up to as many as 16 million. And new calculations will show that even Medicare is under the knife. So this is health care across the board. It is, of course, Medicaid, as important as that is. It is ACA. It is private insurance, which is going to skyrocket. It's everything that is terrible. So the news got even worse when you thought it couldn't get much worse. The bottom line is very simple. People with this bill, tens of millions who would otherwise qualify for health care benefits, would be mummified in new red tape.
Okay, he continues. But he said something there that if you've been following the numbers on this, he said something that might have perked your ears up, and that's 16 million off their health care. The number I was telling you and getting through research was around 11 million. 10.9 was the original figure when it passed the House, was 10.9. Where's he getting this 16 million? Well, I've got it for you, and I want you to try to pay attention, and I want you to be able to bring this information to others when it's brought up, because it's important we know what we're talking about when we want to defend our position regarding this bill, when we want to tell people and explain to people in our lives and our work why this is so bad, where it will be bad, who it will be bad for. Now, with the current cuts, it is estimated by the CBO that it will be 10.9 people uninsured by 2034, 10.9 people. And that is from the Medicaid changes specifically, work requirement changes, stricter eligibility. Another 3.1 million from ACA changes in the Affordable Care Act, changes, all right? Changes they're going to make right now to the Affordable Care Act will account for around 3.1 million off their health care. It's important to note that including in those changes and addition to, so including the changes to the ACA, 3 million, but another 2 or so million will be off their ACA because there are critical subsidies right now given to people who want to get on the Affordable Care Act, who want to go and get health care under the ACA. They get subsidized greatly. How do I know this? Because I am on it. I have a plan through the ACA. And I remember a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago, when I went to get my healthcare plan, I picked one. I got on the phone with an agent, and they walked me through picking the best plan for me. And the price tag for my plan was somewhere around $380 a month. And she told me that. And I got scared. Of course I did. But then she explained to me, but don't get nervous, sir. It's going to be okay. She held my hand. She said, you have subsidies. The government is going to pick up most of that bill. Most of it, oh, that sounds good. I'm thinking maybe 100, maybe half. I ended up paying around $50 myself per month for my health care. And then there was some other stuff tacked on, but it was just a fraction of what the overall price for my health care was that I actually came out of pocket for. That was the subsidies. That is the secret sauce of the ACA. That is the portion, that is the part that makes it affordable, that actually makes it feasible for so many Americans living paycheck to paycheck to get health care where they previously had none. That was it. Those subsidies, they are set to expire, and there is no language in this bill to extend them. The bill as it is right now, those subsidies will expire after 2025, and they will not be picked back up, extended, or, God forbid, expanded. So not only will 3.1 million people be off their ACA because of the changes right now in the bill, there is nothing addressing the expiring subsidies preventing another 5.1 total to be off their ACA coverage. That is the effect taking these subsidies away will have. That many Americans. The rug pulled directly out from under them. And that is around the 16 million he's talking about. But in that 16 million, he's also talking about, and this is important too, he's talking about the immigrants who will lose their benefits. Now, green card holders, asylum seekers, people who were seeking asylum and had it granted to them, they qualify for Medicaid. Okay, they qualify. If you're here legally, holding a green card, here on an asylum that was deemed legitimate, you are afforded a chance to get Medicaid. They'll be gone. The changes on this, gone. Refugees, asylees, lawful permanent residents, they could be off their health care due to the language in this bill. And as far as the undocumented immigrants, the ones that the Republicans like to point at, the loyal ones, the non-grandstanders, they like to mention all of the waste and abuse of undocumented immigrants. What they're actually talking about in certain states, undocumented immigrants can receive health care. California and New York specifically. In their budget, New York alone, they spend $4.3 billion from July 2022 to March 2024. They spent $4.3 billion on health care related accommodations to undocumented immigrants. And most of them are people awaiting judgment on their asylum. They come over, they get a court date to have their asylum claim heard, or they are undocumented for any other legitimate reason. Right now, they have a grace period where they can go get health care while they're waiting. All that's gone. All that's gone. No more California and New York picking up the bill for undocumented immigrants who are most likely going to have a green card or be accepted as an asylee. No more. They're gone. It's not waste and fraud. Again, this is legal coverage provided by these states because they know the value of it. And the federal government and this bill says no more. No more. And at the same time, you got guys like Howard Lutnick, the Secretary of Commerce, saying things like this to you about getting kicked off your health care. Do you remember this little gem?
I describe it to people this way. Let's say Social Security didn't send out their checks this month. My mother-in-law, who's 94, she wouldn't call and complain. She just wouldn't. She'd think something got messed up, and she'll get it next month.
Yeah.
A fraudster always makes the loudest noise, screaming, yelling, and complaining. And if all the guys who did PayPal, like Elon knows this by heart, right? Anybody who's been in the payment system and the process system knows the easiest way to find the fraudster is to stop payments and listen.
Yeah.
Because whoever screams is the one stealing.
Yeah.
Because my mother-in-law's not calling. I mean, come on, your mother, 80-year-olds, 90-year-olds, they trust the government. They trust, okay, maybe it got screwed up. Big deal. They're not going to call and scream at someone. But someone who's stealing always does.
Okay, so Republicans, I want to ask you, people who support this bill, not all Republicans, to those people who support this bill, or just generally support absolutely anything this president says and does, let me ask you a question. When it's all said and done, all the posturing, all the debating, the back and forth between the Senate and the House, when it's all said and done, and this gets passed, and a month later, 2 months later, half a year later, your grandmother does not have the Medicaid benefits enough, is not receiving enough benefit to keep her in her assisted living home. Or your brother or your aunt or somebody you care about who was absolutely at the limits of their margin between their Social Security benefits they were receiving, between the grocery bill, the light bill, gas, barely making it, when they no longer can make it. Are you going to complain? Be honest. Will you call someone and complain? Will you try to find answers to why this is happening to the people you love? Because if you do, Howard Lutnick says, we got you. You're a fraudster. How do we know you're a fraudster? Because you complained about it. If you were a real American, you would understand that these things happen. You'd get it. If you're a real American. You're a fraudster, you complain. We got you. We tagged you. We see you. How do you feel about that Howard Lutnick sound? I mean, the moneyed elite, the power in this country is so far detached from the needs and concerns of an average American, regardless of your political affiliation, that's the type of crap they say with cameras rolling. They are that detached. They have absolutely no idea or any care for what you're going through, what you and your family are facing with this one big ugly ass bill, what could happen to your family and your well-being if this passes. They have no idea, and they do not care. How do I know this? How do you know this? It's out of their mouths. The bill's still in the Senate, and we'll keep track of it.
They'll try to repair the narrative, but Brett Breaks Things will be back tomorrow to break it.